Today I'm going to give you 5 daily public speaking exercises that you can do in less than 10 minutes a day. Some of these techniques Steve Jobs used in his speeches to inspire millions. If you follow these exercises, you'll notice how your public speaking skills improve in just a few days. And watch this video till the end because I'll also give you a bonus tip about something you should not do, despite many people recommend it. But before we get into these daily public speaking exercises, there is one important thing you need to know first. Giving a speech that makes a difference is all about hacking human psychology. It's the hidden secret behind every powerful speaker. There are many studies on public speaking, especially about what makes a charismatic speaker. And to make it clear, a charismatic speaker is someone who grabs attention, keeps people interested when they talk, and makes people feel inspired, moved, or connected to them. And all of this not just because of what they say, but how they say it. But then the question is, how do they do that? Researchers found out that charismatic speakers have a unique way of talking. One of the studies looked closely at 2 famous entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, to see what was different. Steve Jobs was known for being a great speaker. He was considered a more charismatic speaker than Mark Zuckerberg. So what's the difference? When Steve Jobs spoke, he emphasized words much more often than Mark Zuckerberg. This made his speech sound more expressive and engaging. Another difference was how they used pauses. Steve Jobs would change the speed of his talk. Sometimes he slowed down to emphasize important parts, and sometimes he sped up to keep listeners' attention. Also, when Steve Jobs spoke, his voice changed a lot, going from high and low, which kept people interested. Mark Zuckerberg, though, usually spoke in a more flat and steady tone, making him sound less exciting. So if you want to be a charismatic speaker who inspires people, emphasize the important parts, add pauses at meaningful moments, and mix up your tone. This will give you a great start for improvement. Let's break down each part with daily public speaking exercises so you can become a more charismatic speaker, kind of like Steve Jobs. And then I'll give you a couple more exercises that will help you advance these public speaking skills. So the first one is emphasize important words, because the emphasis changes meaning. The same sentence can sound confident, curious, or confusing depending on which word you stress. Without this practice, speakers often talk in a flat tone. This can make even great content sound boring or unclear. It also changes the meaning of what you say. It's like, remember the times when you sent a message to a girlfriend or boyfriend and they understood it completely differently because they did not hear your intonation and chose the meaning that came to their mind first, which wasn't what you meant. And then you had to explain yourself. It's the same when you speak. Intonation and stressing what's important help people understand your ideas better. Let me show you how it works so you will see how powerful this public speaking exercise is. Let's take a phrase that I'll say with a flat tone first. I thought you were going to help me. Now I'll repeat the same phrase several times, but each time I'll emphasize a different word in the sentence. Can you count how many variations we get from this one sentence? Leave a comment with your number below the video. So let's start with the first word, I, and I'll keep going with the rest. I thought you were going to help me. No one else did. I thought you were going to help me, but apparently not. I thought you were going to help me, not someone else. I thought you were going to help me. Past tense disappointment. I thought you were going to help me, not just watch. I thought you were going to help me, not make it worse. I thought you were going to help me, not help yourself. You see, simply emphasizing a specific word changes the perception of what you're saying. As a speaker, you know your content, but your audience does not, so people might not fully understand you. Start emphasizing the parts you want people to pay more attention to or remember. This daily public speaking exercise is easy to practice in any conversation. Every time you talk to someone, you can stress an important word a little more and see how it lands. It seems like a small thing, but it changes the entire perception of the way you speak. Lily Walters once said, "The success of your presentation will be judged not by the knowledge you send, but by what the listener receives." Have you noticed which words I emphasized? Knowledge and what the listener receives. Because these are two parts I want you to focus on more. And I've done something else there to grab your attention. I paused for a moment. So here's the daily public speaking exercise number 2. Pause with purpose. Pauses are one of the most underrated tools in public speaking. A simple pause can make you sound more confident, more convincing, and more emotional. Imagine giving a speech about your success, talking about the ups and downs. When sharing one of your big lessons, you might say something like, "When I started out, I believed success came from working harder, but it actually comes from working smarter." It's a great lesson. Now, let me say the same thing with an intentional pause. When I started out, I believed success came from working harder, but it actually comes from working smarter. Can you feel the difference? I emphasized the important words and added a pause in a phrase. This pause gives the audience time to process the idea. It tells them, this part matters. Also, just like in acting, a well-timed pause can create tension, surprise, or emotional depth. Now you might be wondering, how do I know where to add those pauses? So there are a few parts in a speech where pauses especially can make a bigger difference. The first one is after your opening line or hook. If you start with a hook, give it a moment to land. A pause here makes the audience lean in. For example, "I almost didn't make it here today because I was scared to tell this story." This combination of a hook and a pause creates tension and curiosity. And then the audience thinks, "What happened? What's the story? Why were you scared?" The next good place to use pauses where it always adds more depth is before and after key points. Let your audience absorb the big ideas or the main point you want to make. A 1-second pause before and 2-second pause after works well. For example, there is one mindset shift that changed my entire business. I stopped focusing on what I wanted to say and started focusing on what they needed to hear. These pauses give people a moment to process what you've just said, and they make your speech more memorable. Now guess, where else people need some space to think? Where else do pauses work well and get the audience involved in what you say? After asking a question. And that's exactly what I just did. I ask you a question and pause for a moment before giving you the answer. It creates a conversation between you, the speaker, and your audience. Even if you're speaking in front of many people, it gives you a chance to connect with each person at the moment you ask a question. Don't rush to fill the space. A pause after a question gives people time to reflect and creates anticipation for your answer. For example, do you speak to be seen or make a difference? That choice is what separates ordinary speakers from those that change lives. This pause creates space for a mindset shift, especially when you ask a thought-provoking question. And one more place where a pause in public speaking often works well. It is before your conclusion. Signal to the audience that something important is coming. Let the silence draw them in before your final takeaway. For example, "So here's what I want you to remember." And people will go like, what's the point there? And the point is, like Mark Twain once said, the right word may be effective, but no word was ever as effective as a rightly timed pause. But there is one more thing that studies have shown makes public speakers sound more charismatic. We've already covered emphasizing the important parts, and adding pauses at meaningful moments. Now we have the third element, mixing up your tone. So your daily public speaking exercise number 3 is use different tonality and energy in your voice when you speak. Here's why it's important. A flat, monotone voice can quickly lose an audience. But when you shift your tone, speeding up, slowing down, getting louder and softer, you create variety, which keeps people engaged. When your tone matches your message, people don't just hear your words, they feel them. In public speaking, if you want to truly connect with your audience, don't just deliver content, deliver emotion. That's what makes your message unforgettable. Let me give you an example. Here's the line I'll play with. You have more power than you think. So it's the baseline with a flat tone. Now I'm going to give you a few variations with a different tonality and energy. You have more power than you think. You have more power than you think. You have more power than you think. Have you noticed how the emotion changes depending on how I say it? You create a stronger connection with your audience by adding more energy and variety to your tone. Now, speakers often tell stories from their own experience. So imagine that you give a speech about your growth as a public speaker. How could you implement all 3 elements that charismatic speakers use in their speeches? Emphasizing words, adding intentional pauses, and using different tonality and energy. Maybe you could tell it something like this. The first time I stood in front of an audience, my hands were shaking. My heart racing so loud I could hear it echo in my ears. I had rehearsed that speech 100 times. I knew every line. But the moment I saw their eyes, my mind went blank. In that silence, I had a choice, walk off or lean in. I took a deep breath, looked up, and I just spoke. Not from the script, but from me. It wasn't just a story I thought would be a good fit. It was a story I had lived through. I knew that low point, the feeling of emptiness and hopelessness, was something many people go through too. And something happened I didn't expect. They listened, really listened. That's when I learned something no textbook ever taught me. People don't connect to perfect. They connect to real. Since then, I've spoken to rooms with many people, but that moment, that was the one that changed everything. Not because I was flawless, but because for the first time, I was willing to be open and imperfect, because I knew that what I was about to share would help people. So if you give a speech, remember this. Helping others matters more than trying to be perfect. When you focus on helping instead of trying to impress, you stop worrying so much about how you look or sound, and you start making a real impact. So that would be my speech. How does it feel? What would be your touching story that you could tell so powerfully that people would lean in, listen, and reflect on? And here's where we get to daily public speaking exercise number 4. Tell a story of a day. Because if you want people to really listen to what you're saying, tell a story. Stories stick. They help your audience feel something, not just hear information. You could list off a bunch of facts, but most people will forget them. A good story, though, they'll remember it for years. Stories also help you connect with people on a human level. They turn just another speaker into someone that audience relates to and roots for. Whether you're teaching, pitching, or inspiring, storytelling makes your message hit deeper. And this is also how you practice those 3 key elements of a charismatic public speaker. You use them when you tell stories. All you need for this daily public speaking exercise is just one story and one person to tell this story to. Now, where do you get the stories? Actually, from everywhere. They can be stories from your business or personal experience, stories about what happened to you recently, stories that you've read or heard about, stories that someone told you. any story. The point of this exercise is to get better at public speaking, at delivering your stories. So you found one story, then you need one person to tell this story to. Because practicing with real people helps you get used to reactions, build confidence, and manage your timing. Friends, family, and co-workers are a great place to start. Let them know that you're practicing public speaking and storytelling, and then ask if they would be cool with you testing out a short 1-minute story on them. Most people are happy to help, especially if they don't have to do anything and just listen. But here's one thing. I give you these simple daily public speaking exercises with examples and tips so you can improve even before getting on stage. But when you get a chance to practice all of these techniques with real people, it's so easy to forget something important because it's a lot to take in. To help you with that, I've created a guide called Level Up Your Public Speaking, which includes some of these tips and others that will help you become a better public speaker. A link to this guide is in the description below. Check it out. Getting back to our story of the day exercise, if you are serious about improving your public speaking, find someone to tell your story to. It doesn't have to be formal, just someone who can simply listen to you for 1 or 2 minutes. The best thing you can do is find someone who is also interested in practicing public speaking. Then you can support each other practicing storytelling or even play around with the next public speaking exercise. Observe and comment. Here's why this exercise is so important. You can learn a lot about public speaking, and over time you'll get better at delivering speech you've prepared. But when it comes to improvising or speaking spontaneously on the spot, most people freeze up because they don't have anything prepared. They get stuck trying to say the right thing instead of just saying something real. So observe and comment is a simple daily public speaking exercise that helps you get comfortable thinking and speaking on the fly, get better at articulating your point of view, and as a result, speaking with clarity and confidence at the moment. It trains you to be more present and trust yourself. And this is a big part of becoming a natural, engaging speaker. Observe and comment exercise is exactly what it sounds like. You look at something, anything, and talk about it out loud for 1 or 2 minutes. And you can play it in 2 ways. Let's say you're looking at your coffee mug. Here's my mug. First, you can just describe your mug. It's simply answering the question, what do you see? So, this mug has a map of the Pacific Ocean and the islands there. I've had it for almost 10 years. It's quite old, but I keep it as a memory because it's a gift from a good friend who taught me a life lesson I'll never forget. And you can finish here. It's already good practice to quickly express your thoughts. But if you want to play this observe and comment game at an advanced level, don't just describe what you see. Try to come up with a story related to the subject. It could be a story about the subject itself or something associated with it. For example, I mentioned that this mug is a gift from a good friend who taught me a life lesson I'll never forget. So I can continue with that story. One time when we were at a coffee shop, I was about to pay for my coffee. But she said, "No, I want to treat you." I felt uncomfortable because I wasn't used to friends paying for me. She explained that while it's great to give and help others, sometimes allowing people to help you is a blessing for them too. You can't truly bless others until you know what it feels like to receive. And this lesson is important for public speakers too, because so many speakers are afraid to speak in public. They're good with giving and sharing their experience, but often think about if people will like them and if the message they share resonates with people. So they forget how much of a blessing it is for the audience to finally have someone who can share exactly what they need at that moment. And that's what you do as a speaker. With your message, you give a gift to people that someone might need to hear today when you speak. Now, let's stop here and break down what we just worked on. Have you noticed how powerful this daily public speaking exercise is? The basic level of this exercise is to describe the subject as it is. The next level is to tell a story that comes with this subject. You give it a whole different meaning. So to play with this exercise, you can pick anything around you. Your favorite item on your desk, an object in your bag or pocket, something you've had for years but never really looked at. Then just start describing it and see if you can even tell a story behind it or relate it to this subject. It's an opportunity for you to practice storytelling too. And here's a bonus tip for this video. One thing you should not do to practice public speaking, despite what people tell you, don't practice in front of the mirror. And it again comes to human psychology, because when you are watching yourself, you start acting for the mirror instead of focusing on the message. You start thinking more about how you look instead of how you connect. And the worst part is that it creates muscle memory for you to speak more mechanically. It kind of becomes second nature, and it's really hard to get rid of this habit later because you'll start doing it automatically. In real life, you don't get to watch yourself speak. You talk to people. You react to their body language, energy, and facial expressions, not your own. Practicing in front of a mirror doesn't replicate that at all. Practice with real people, even if it's only one listener, because this also creates muscle memory, but this time the right one. When you speak to a real person, you see how what you share resonates with people and where they start to lose interest. You notice that some stories are more engaging than others. You realize that your message can be important to someone. And all of this build your confidence as a public speaker. Alright, so here are our 5 daily public speaking exercises. First, emphasize important words. Then, pose with purpose. Number 3, use different tonality and energy. Number 4, tell a story of a day. And the last one, number 5, observe and comment. The first 3 will help you be a more charismatic speaker. You can use them in any conversation. Story of a day will help you be a better storyteller. And the observe and comment exercise will level up your improvisation and ability to speak on the fly. To make them more practical, mix them up. Tell a story of the day or play the observe and comment game, and add one of the exercises for becoming a more charismatic speaker. For example, one day you practice a story where you emphasize different words. Another day you can do the observe and comment exercise and play with tonality and energy as you describe the subject. And more importantly, have fun with it. The more you practice, the easier and enjoyable public speaking becomes. Then, when you get on stage, you carry this feeling with you. You can easily do these daily public speaking exercises in less than 10 minutes a day. If you stick with it, you will see improvement in just a few days. If this video was helpful to you, please like it and subscribe to the channel. And for more public speaking tips, watch this video next.